Good afternoon. I'm Chief John Carmichael. Welcome to Walpole Five-0. Today is January 24th, 2017. And as usual, as before we get into the incidents, a few things to go over. Police hire. Just last week we had Officer Paul Henneberry, who was appointed by our Board of Selectmen as our next Walpole police officer. So we're very excited about this. Paul Henneberry is a Walpole kid, went to Walpole High School, and he's a graduate of the Mass Maritime Academy. One of the great things we loved about Paul during his interview process was that he was still involved in college and had the opportunity to go to the academy already once before, but he chose to finish his schooling out and basically flat out told us that he wanted to finish his school before he got into the police academy, and certainly have a lot of respect for that because his education was important to him. But now he's ready to go. He's graduated from college and ready to go into the police academy in March, and we're very excited about getting Paul on the department. He really understands the community policing philosophy, which is another thing that we like about him. He gets that, so we're very excited to get him out there coming up in March. On another note, as Paul's going into the academy, Michelle Slavin and John Murphy, who were appointed as police officers back in September, will be coming out of the police academy. The police academy in Massachusetts is about 6 months long. It's a long time, 26 weeks, and those officers will be coming out and hitting the streets pretty soon. So it's going to be great. We'll be getting Michelle and John out of the academy, and Paul will be going in. So looking forward to that. Community outreach, really wanted to mention at Longview Farm, we had police officers go down there last night, and we participated in a kickball tournament. We had 14 police officers from the department go down there, and we played a nasty game of kickball with the basically it was the 5 to 13-year-olds, and it was amazing. We had a great time. The officers had as much fun time as the kids did, and what this really does is, we're always trying to deal with the kids at Longview as part of our community, because these kids come from very difficult backgrounds. And when we go down there for a crisis type of situation, we want to be a familiar face to them because, as I said, there's some young kids there, 5 to 13-year-old age group that we played with. But when we get there and it's a crisis situation, we want to be a familiar face. We want to be able to de-escalate situations and deal with the problem appropriately. And we think that when we do this community outreach and we're reaching out to these kids, we let them know that we care about them and that we're there to help. And they're in tough situations, and I'm very proud of the Walpole police officers, and I'm grateful for them to give up their time to go down there and engage these kids in such a positive way, and it was great. There was a lot of hesitation when the kids first came into the gym, and that quickly dissolved after we got involved in this kickball game, and it was a great turnout, and we had a great time. On another note, Officer Hazeldine and Officer Hart went back there today to Longview after they were invited to be part of the lunch program, and Jackie and Officer Hart got involved serving lunch, and so they acted as some lunch people today, and the kids really got a kick out of that as well, seeing them on the other side serving them lunch today, so we appreciate them doing that. And every time we do things like that, it has an impact, and it's an impact that little kids like this will remember for a long time, and as I said, especially in a crisis situation. So I want to thank everybody on our department that participated in that. Larceny suspects identified. So in the past few weeks I've talked about several incidents where we had, for whatever reason, we had kind of a series of these, but there were some larcenies that took place at Palumbo Liquors. We've had several more that happened at Wines and More. And we had a fourth one that occurred as well, that we were able to identify that individual, but we still had 3 more that were outstanding. But there was videotape surveillance that was provided. We disseminated that. We started to look into the investigation side of it. And this was a significant amount of alcohol. It wasn't, just going in there and stealing a 6-pack. It was in the hundreds of dollars worth of alcohol. And obviously a hit to the proprietors that own these stores. So we started the investigation on the Palumbo's Liquor. We identified a man from Brockton as being the individual that was stealing the alcohol there, Donald Del Tufo. We actually went out to Brockton because he was arrested out there Several nights ago, one of our detectives went out, met him at Brockton Court. We actually recovered the jacket that he was wearing during the larceny. That's very specific, that you can see in not only Walpole surveillance video, but also several other communities where he was doing the same thing, going in and stealing alcohol. And basically, from what he told us, that it was so that he could transfer that over to buy drugs in Brockton. So we were able to identify him. He failed to show up for an interview. We asked him to voluntarily come down and show up for an interview. He failed to do that, so now we have an arrest warrant out for him, and we'll be looking to deal with that situation as soon as possible. The other two issues at Wines and More, we were also able to identify two individuals on separate occasions that went in there and stole alcohol. Both individuals have been identified as two minors from Norwood, the town of Norwood, and we have identified them. We've interviewed one of them so far, and we'll be interviewing the second one as well. But great job by the officers on these. Detective Madden got involved, Sergeant Kilroy. One of our dispatchers, Dispatcher Carly Moriarty, saw some of the additional photos of the individual suspect from the Palumbo's liquor store incident, and also she relayed information to our detectives, and they were able to identify a car involved in that kind of thing. So even our dispatchers jumped in on this one, and Carly did a great job, and our detectives, Detective Songen's working on the other one that occurred at Wines and More. So just wanted to update you on that and let you know that we did identify all three suspects in these cases here. So getting into the log, January 17th, we made an arrest. This occurred at Longview, and it was an arrest for assault and battery and being a disorderly person. This assault happened against staff. So when police officers got down there, they determined that it was an individual that we had dealt with in the past. So therefore, he was placed under arrest, brought to the Walpole Police Station, and booked, processed. And we did notify juvenile probation, as we always do when there's a minor involved. The juvenile probation decided against sending this individual to the alternative lockout facility in Brockton, and instead basically released him on own recognizance and went back to Longview. So this is one of those situations where, you know, they're already placed down there, but according to juvenile probation, they didn't want them going to alternative lockup, and they were released back. So we'll deal with that in court coming up in the future. Credit card fraud. Officer Doherty took a report of credit card fraud. This was several $1,000s that were charged to a credit card after someone had made some purchases online. This one here, even though there was several $1,000s worth of credit that was placed, the woman was able to work with the credit card company. We found out that the credit card company already had flagged this information, and the person was not successful in making any purchases, so that's good. We'll have to see when that happens. Hit and run crash. This involved marijuana. Officer Bieberman responded to a crash on Washington Street. This was a hit and run. The individuals that were in the vehicle, there was one driver and one passenger, left the scene on foot. They were ultimately found, and during the investigation of the crash, Officer Bieberman found a small bag of marijuana, which was discovered in the passenger compartment of the vehicle. And during his interview and observations of the operator, he did not notice that the person had exhibited any signs of impairment, so the officer took that into consideration. And he did issue this operator a citation under the new law, the Open Container of Marijuana Law, 94G13D, which is basically a civil fine if you use marijuana in public, as you can't use it in public, or have an open container of marijuana or marijuana products while you're driving or you're inside of a motor vehicle. And Officer Bieberman did a great job, because this is exactly what he should have done. You can't have people that have these open containers of marijuana in the passenger compartment of the car, because it does lead to drug driving and that type of thing. So Officer Bieberman issued this citation for the $100 for the, I'm sorry, for $500. It's a $500 fine, and did a great job with this open container. The individual had told Officer Bieberman he was a medical marijuana patient. However, we are able to confirm that through the Criminal Justice Information System, CJIS. and through DPH, and no such card existed. So Officer Beeben did the right thing in issuing the citation. So on that note, open container, if you have an open container of marijuana in a motor vehicle, it's a $500 civil fine, as I mentioned. There's also 94G, the new marijuana law, also has violation of public use, which is $100. And we also have the Walpole bylaw, which passed through town meeting several years ago, which is up to a $300 fine if you're using marijuana in public. So you still can't, despite legalization, there are still restrictions, and you can't use it in a vehicle or in public. Let's see, January 18th, we had a report. This is a well-being check, also turned into an overdose type of situation in North Walpole. Had to make forced entry, and the person was located and transported to Norwood Hospital, thankfully. And good call by, sometimes you will get calls from family members that they know that there could be a problem, and they want us to check on the well-being of a family, a loved one. And a lot of times, sometimes these even come from out of state, and we'll go down and we'll check. And in this case, the individual that called was right, and we were able to help this person and get them the help that they needed in time. So we're glad that that happened. We responded also on that day, responded to an unattended death investigation. This occurred as an individual that was found on a sidewalk in Walpole Center. And in these types of situations, when we go to an unattended death, there's nobody else around. There's just a person there who has been deceased. With a certain protocol that we have to follow, and one of them is notifying the medical examiner's office, who always has jurisdiction over a body in Massachusetts. They are also responsible for doing the post-mortem and determining cause of death. Walpole detectives also responded. The district attorney's office also has jurisdiction in the case for sudden deaths, and as a result, we also call the district attorney's office. We call Crime Prevention and Control, which is the CPAC unit from the state police, out of the district attorney's office. And then that investigation is coordinated between the medical examiner, the DA's office, and the local police department. So very sad situation, but I think the point here is that with sudden deaths or unattended deaths, a lot of times when they call the police when someone is found, and the police will go down there, there is a certain protocol that have to be followed, and it's never like to make the family or loved one slighted. There's just certain criteria that has to be followed, very linear set of rules that have to be followed in order to deal with these types of situations, especially when it's certain criteria like the person's age, or if they had no medical history, or there's signs of wrongdoing or anything like that. So there's certain criteria that we look at, checklists that we go down. But in this case, it appears that it's very likely that this was just a natural cause type of situation, and unfortunately it happened in kind of a bad location. And we will work with that to ultimately figure out through the ME's office what the cause was of this. So that's very loud. Report of a fight. This was also on that same day. Officers responded to a Route 1 parking lot for a report of a fight between a male and female. The officers started an investigation, and it was determined that the victim was 60 years old from Scituate and was assaulted by a female who we identified as being a female from Brockton who was 24. So this wasn't a domestic situation, but after going through several barriers, we were able to determine that this individual was a John, had ordered a prostitute who came over from Brockton. They had several meetings in the past, showed up at a motel up on Route 1 and got in a fight over the prostitute wanting to drive the John's vehicle, and he did not want to allow her to drive the vehicle, so she assaulted him. She has been identified, and we will be summoning that individual in for assault and battery. A larceny attempt, this occurred at Walmart. This was just a reported male with braids attempting to leave the area. He fled on foot, but he discarded the items that he had stolen prior to getting into a black SUV and fleeing the scene. So the officers went up, but they did not locate that vehicle. An underage drinking incident. Officer Doherty encountered an underage person who was drinking, was driving, but was not intoxicated. The party was turned over to an adult sibling, and Officer Doherty also made contact with the parents. Big issue with this is, this obviously there's issues with underage drinking here in this situation, but it's important to remember, and I'm kind of get up on the preaching mode here, but under 21, there's a .02 threshold for people that are under 21 years of age in Massachusetts operating under the influence law, and that's not a lot. So it's, I always try and when we're talking to youth, let them know about what the law is about OUI, because it's not the same as it is for an adult, where an adult can have a blood alcohol concentrate of .08 and above as being a per se limit. That's not the same for people that are under the age of 21. For kids under the age of 21, it's a .02 threshold, which is much lower. It's not a lot of alcohol, but basically, if the person is under 21 years of age, and they register a BAC of .02 or greater, they automatically can lose their driver's license for 30 days. And if they're 18 years of age up to 21 years of age, they have to go to a youth alcohol program. At that time, they can also have an additional 180 days added on to the penalty. And if they're under 18, it's even more severe. They can lose their license for a year and also have to attend the youth alcohol program. So it's very stringent, and anytime we're doing community events or that type of thing, especially with kids, we try and let them know that it is more administrative. So these are administrative sanctions, but if you go to court, the same still applies as far as what OUI is, OUI liquor, and being charged with that crime. But these other things are administrative, and it is significant if you're under 21 and you have that .02 threshold, which is, again, as I said, isn't a lot, and you could lose your license for a significant amount of time. So it's important for our kids to know that. In this case, this fellow did not show any signs of intoxication or anything like that, and Officer Doherty used his discretion in letting the mom and dad handle the situation at home. Protective custody. A local establishment, they reported an intoxicated male would not leave. This individual was placed under protective custody, and this individual here, is the reason why I threw this one in here is because he'd been thrown out of other locations as well, but he had not been served in any of the other locations in the center of town, and just kind of showed up intoxicated. So I'm not sure where he came from, how he got that way, but it didn't happen because of the service at an establishment in Walpole Center that we know about. So one of the booking sergeant, actually, when they got him back to the police station, realized that he stated that this was one of the most intoxicated person he had ever met, and this person was basically not in good medical, the way he was exhibiting signs of intoxication. He needed to go to the hospital, and the sergeant ended up having him transported as opposed to staying in the station during this time, which is a very good idea. So we had an arrest at Longview. It was a couple teenagers who broke into a shed and stole a chainsaw and some other equipment. They stole it because they wanted to build a fort. That was kind of their intent with this, but you can't break into a building. And these two individuals who we had dealt with before were arrested for B&E and larceny over $250, which is a felony. Juvenile probation then released these two individuals back to Longview after the incident had taken place. And again, this was against the desire of staff at Longview. They wanted probation to put this kid over at the alternative lockup in Brockton in the DYS facility, but they did not do that. And sometimes we run into these problems where there's an arrest made, but it's really up to juvenile probation whether or not they're going to hold this person, whether they're going to release, whether or not they're going to send him back to where he was. So in this case, it's one of those situations where juvenile probation released the individuals back and decided not to put them in an alternative lockup. So January 21st, there was a summons. Patrolman Haber had a stop that resulted in a summons. This was for just a revoked registration and uninsured registration as a result of a traffic stop and a summons for that. OUI, operating under the influence of liquor, Officer Haber, during the same night, arrested a 34-year-old male for OUI and speeding. This vehicle was traveling at a high rate of speed, was checked on radar, and was determined to be in fact speeding. Officer Haber stopped that vehicle and found that the individual was intoxicated, showed many signs of impairment. He administered field sobriety tests, which the individual failed, and was arrested and brought to the police station where they refused a breath test. So Officer Haber, on that case there, dealt with that. Malicious hit and run. Officer Vinciguerra investigated a possible hit and run that turned out to be more of a malicious destruction of incident, malicious destruction of property incident, and Officer Vinciguerra continues to investigate and will decide whether or not he will be summonsing in the responsible person in this case. FIO, as you know, as I've mentioned, we've had car breaks recently. We did not have any last week. It's been the first week since in quite a while that that trend has seemed to stop for now. But we still have been doing random checks, keeping more patrols in the area where we're having these breaks, especially at night. And we still have been conducting field interview observations, and Officer Haber had conducted field interview observations on several suspicious males that night, which all checked out to be okay. But, you know, it's part of the process of seeing people in places where that's just odd. There's reasonable suspicion that, you know, they may be doing, the criminal activity could be afoot, and they're encountered by the police officers and found that nothing was really to be worried or be concerned with. Suspicious activity, we got a call about two people who parked the vehicle, got out of the front of the vehicle, got into the back of the vehicle, and then a while later emerged outside back into the vehicle and getting dressed. So you can leave that one up to your imagination. But we spoke to those two individuals and let them know that whatever they were doing, it wasn't the right place, and they were moved along. And as a result, the location where they were also got a letter of disinvite, which is basically a trespass notice saying that, you know, we don't want you on the property. Here's written notice. If you come back, you could be subjected to arrest or a trespassing charge. So January 22nd, there was a fare evasion call. Officer Perchicante responded to the area of Main Street, 500 block, for a female who did not pay her cab fare. This cab fare individual took the cab from their apartment to Friendly's in Norwood and then came back again with the ice cream, but did not have the money to pay for the fare, the $21, which was owed. She was subsequently summoned for taxi fare evasion by Officer Perchicante. Stadium, also January 22nd, on the 4 to 12 shift, officers responded to South Walpole. This was to assist with post-Patriot game traffic. Vehicle and pedestrian traffic was steady, but it moved along. No real major issues, but part of the issue that we've been dealing with in Walpole is post-event. So we have details. We actually have 7 details that are assigned to South Walpole prior to an event, and basically what we do is we stagger the time. So if it's a 1 o'clock game, officers will be there at 10, they'll work till 2, for an example. But what we're really having problems with now is mostly after the event. So now the event gets out and we don't have details up there, and what happens is the entire shift ends up getting consumed, and all the resources go down there, and it basically leaves problems for the rest of the town. So last week, I mentioned this last week on Walpole 5-0, but we met with the Foxborough chief last week, Chief Baker, and their operations is Lieutenant Rich Noonan. Had a very good meeting. We are going to request 2 more police officers to post down in South Walpole post-event, and this is really to deal with the livery vehicles, the Uber vehicles, the limos, the cabs, people that are converging down in South Walpole after a game to pick up fares and to pick up people that are coming from Foxborough Stadium, who has an area for these ride shares and for these cabs to go to, but they have to pay a fee, and they don't want to pay the fee, so they come to South Walpole and do it. So we're going to be careful with making sure that, because people from Walpole still need to be able to go down there and pick up their family members or friends or whatever else. But what we really want to kind of focus on is the livery and the Uber and limos that are going back into Boston and everywhere else that shouldn't really be parked in South Walpole. So we're going to try and deal with that, and we should know soon from the stadium if we're going to get that. The other thing that is important to note, and I've brought this up in meetings and I will continue to, is critical incidents at the stadium. A mass casualty event, a terrorist event. You're talking about 70,000 people, the New England Patriots, who, while there's no threats up there, but there is always the potential there. And because of the Walpole's proximity to the stadium, I mean, if you measure from the tip of the stadium to any home in Walpole, you're talking about a half a mile by the way the crow flies, 3/4 of a mile to the Boyden School. And that's very close. That is very close if there was ever a critical incident to happen up there, mass casualty event. There would be a lot of things that would take place, unified command up there. There would be, people may be in lockdown, they may lock in place, they may be evacuated. And a lot of those routes are going to come into Walpole. I mean, you're going to have to go down Route 1, access Water Street and access Washington Street. That's where the ambulances are going to go. That's where more resources are going to be coming back responding to the stadium. And we have nothing. Walpole, doesn't get the resources that the stadium gets. And so I'm going to ask at a bare minimum to get 2 police officers down there to help us out and to be there post-event. For any event that's over 30,000 people, I think would suffice. So we're working on that, and we'll keep you updated on that as well. Shoplifting on January 23rd, Officer Doherty took a report of shoplifting at Walmart. He found these 2 individuals from Dorchester who were stealing some items. They were under $100. These individuals had no criminal history, no record in the past, and Officer Doherty spoke with these kids, kind of gave them the riot act and kicked them loose. There will be no charges on this, but his discretion showed that he didn't need to be charging these kids who had no history at all whatsoever. So he did them a favor that day. A warrant arrest, Officer Percicanti arrested a South Walpole resident. This occurred as a result of a default warrant for OUI. This was not a Walpole warrant, but a default warrant is a warrant that's issued by the court when somebody fails to appear to court, or they default on some agreement that was done through the court, and they've defaulted, and this warrant issues. And as I've mentioned before, Officer Taylor Bethany does all of our warrant management system, and she does an amazing job. As I've mentioned, we may have anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 active warrants in our system at any given time, and we do make some effort to try and keep those warrants down and make the arrests for the court and bring these people before the court routinely. We do this routinely. We keep it updated, and Officer Bethany does a great job. And this was a result of us going through we call it a warrant dump, where we dump all of the warrants from the past week, and Officer Percicanti just took some initiative and cleared this warrant for us, so great job by him. Fire, officers responded to assist the Walpole Fire Department, and firefighters on Common Street. It was a report of an electrical fire. There was some outlets in the home that were smoldering and power was shut off. Very scary situation to have that happen in someone's home. The electrical inspector responded, and police officers on scene basically just assist with traffic and everything, and the Walpole Fire Department did a great job in dealing with that situation. So crashes, as you know, today the weather's been bad, awful rain, very high winds. We've had that all night for the past 24 hours. Officers have responded to multiple motor vehicle crashes, some with injuries, no significant injuries, but with injuries nonetheless. multiple crashes last night, multiple crashes today, Tuesday, and a lot of tree limbs down, and this has all been due to the weather and the wind. And just as a precautionary note, be very careful. You know, visibility is very low. We don't have any road closures or anything, flooding or anything like that right now, but you do have to take some extra precautions out there with the winds like this and driving. And not only that, but you've seen these cases where these big limbs come down, trees come down, and they can cause a lot of damage and hurt people, and you got to be aware of these things. Kind of have your head on a swivel as you drive in weather like this, and be careful out there. So that's all I have for today, and for this January 24th, and I want to thank you very much for joining Walpole 5-0. Thank you.